For those of you who are tuned in online and heard the laughing of the congregation, it was because I was gesturing so sweetly to our grand raffle entry here. For those of you who want to have a chance at winning such a fine e-bike, we have raffle tickets still available through next Saturday. Welcome. I'm starting our time together, and I don't know, we'll switch this up again. We just keep switching it up to figure out what works best. But thank you. We've had a few people come forward and light candles for joys and sorrows. Is there anyone who would like to lift something up they didn't think to come forward and write a note and let us know about a joy or sorrow this morning, just to help us feel our entry into community together? Virginia? Sure. We'll light a candle. Thank you, Virginia, for Becky Lohr, who's facing surgery. I'm going to write that down so I remember to include it in the prayer. Well, thank you all for bringing your whole selves into this space. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation here, nestled into Transylvania County. You'll notice I'm wearing my mask a little longer than usual, not because I think I'm contagious or anything. I did test myself this morning, but just as a part of a follow-up from Friday, we welcome you all, whether you're mask wearers or not, but we definitely are encouraged mask wearing, considering how many folks have been catching the variants that are going on out there. And we'd like you all to stay safe and active. So I'll take it off now that I've made my point. So you can see my smile. Good. We have several announcements this morning, and we'll ask the folks in the AV booth to show some of those on the screen, and I'll fill in as we go along. I already mentioned the raffle. I don't think we had a slide on that one, so I wanted to mention that. Go ahead, Doug. Whatever you've got up there, I'll read off the screen. Oh, yeah. Next week, the staff and I, so Kevin and Tricia and RK and I are going to do a final service on this month's theme of courage. We're going to also touch on fears, and we're going to have some creepy Halloween music in the service and other things. But a part of prep would be for you, if you wish, to think about something of a fear that you would like to have read out loud, and maybe a statement of courage, a little brief note on either of them. And I'll collect those during the week or on Sunday morning. And so we'd love to include voices in this service. Thank you. I believe that we will need prayers. Yeah, we need votes. You can be voting now. It's interesting, the postcards that our volunteers had sent out to be mailed suggested that early voting is a really good time to go and try to vote, because if there are any mistakes, they catch it right there and you have time. It's not like it's the last minute thing and you're stuck with doing a provisional ballot or whatever. You can find out, oh, I got dropped from a list, or oh, I'm at the wrong polling place, or whatever it is that you need to do. So please do participate in voting, and then in whatever way you need to decompress from all of this election stuff and its results, however much we know, on Wednesday, I will hold a prayer time and a chance for folks to come together, and right here, the day after. So, thank you.
What we really need are prayers the day before.
I'm not preventing you from each individually praying before, but I have a feeling some of you want to come to a familiar place to pray after. say it. Candy donations are needed. We're doing Halloween Fest next Saturday. We realized we spent an awful lot of money running to the store to keep buying enough candy for all of the young people who came to our booth at Halloween Fest, our first time making a public appearance like that as a congregation. Hey, we're here, Brevard. And so we're asking if some of you could offset by passing on some candy to us to help us with our supplies. Thank you. Do we have any more? Yes. All right. The 26th of October each year is Intersex Awareness Day. And so intersex folks are born with variances of their sex traits that don't fit binary male or female boxes. And we, as a welcoming congregation, welcome all of the LGBTQIA plus knowledge and keeping up with education. So remember, October 26th is Awareness Day. Next slide, Doug. Today is the very last discussion session for Soul Matters. I'll keep sending out the packets, but we've had so few people attend anymore. I don't know. It's like if the pandemic's over and you don't want to sit around with each other on a Sunday. You want to get out there. So this will be the last time we're reserving space in the church on a Sunday for discussion. I could still discuss it with you anytime you want. I love discussing religion. But this will be the last one. And next month, we're going to, I think on the second Sunday, we're going to try soup on Sunday again. Doing some other things that might draw more interest on people to be part of our community. So thank you for any who want to come today, whether you've read the packet or not. Always good conversations. Is that it? I must not have anything more to say. Thank you again for all being here in this place. And I turn it over to our recorded music from Janice, our Introit Earth Song.
Well, good morning. The opening words are by the Reverend Gretchen Haley. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? In these days, we find ourselves too often stuck with these questions. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? We grasp at signs and markers, articles of news and analysis, as if the new zodiac capable of forecasting all that life may yet bring our way. As if we could prepare, as if life had ever made any promises of making sense or turning out the way we thought. As if we are not also actors in this still unfolding story. For this hour we gather to surrender to the mystery, to release ourselves from the needing to know, from the yearning that we have to have it all figured out, and also the burden of believing we either have control or we don't. Here in our song and our silence, our stories and our sharing, we make peace for a new breath, a new healing, a new possibility to take root. That is courage, forged in the fire of our coming together and felt in the spirit that comes alive in this act of faith, that we believe still that a new world is possible, that we are creating it already here and now. Come, let us worship together. If you'll all stand for opening hymn number 126. Now for the chalice lighting, I'd like to read the introduction and then have you join me in unison for the remainder. To encourage means to hearten, to impart strength and confidence. This is our work as a religious community, to encourage one another, to be bold in engaging the world around us, as well as what scares us internally, to give one another the confidence and heart to live as fully as possible. Now together, with full hearts, we affirm our relationships with one another and accept our changes and our power. We accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous. We light this chalice, symbol of all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be. A shared ministry encourages those within and beyond our walls.
All of our families are on the camp out this week. So I figured I wouldn't do wisdom for all ages. I'm going to assume you're all wise enough. So we're going to skip right to the offering. This is the time in which you can put something in the envelope for Sharing House, maybe add a little bit extra, or that pledge check that didn't come out, automatic withdrawal or by mail. This is the time in which we exercise our hearts by being generous and giving something of our treasure to this place. We will now gratefully receive the morning offering.
There is joy, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. Where there is God, there is no need. All here is peace, all said, there is joy, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is each land. Which there is God, there is each
Thank you. Thank you. What is given in love, we receive with great joy. And we say, thank you. I invite you into this moment of prayer, meditation, to center yourselves as whatever way works for you, with eyes open, eyes closed. Taking deep breaths, perhaps feeling yourself grounded with your feet on the floor. Spirit of love and life, we who are gathered here this morning come here full of ideas, the ways in which we might work out how we go about our week, how we recover from the week that we just had, how we celebrate with one another our joys and commiserate with our sorrows. Spirit of love and life, we come to this community to feel the connection of relationships and the knowledge that we are not alone. On this morning in particular, we have candles glowing to lift up the joys and the sorrows. Relationship means in particular this weekend a celebration of the wedding of Carrie Branham and Seth Batchelder, and our best wishes for them. And a joy as well from Kay Webb that her brother Jack Knight came through surgery well and is at home recovering now. We come with the sorrows. The Maple Street neighborhood is lighting a candle in memory of Gordon Neal, who died totally unexpectedly Thursday night. And we come with hopes and prayers for Becky Lohr as she is preparing for surgery. Spirit of love and life, for all that has not been spoken here, let us as well leave spaces open in our prayers and our conversations with one another in coffee time or whenever we would see one another, so that we might know better something of one another, and in so doing break down any barriers that might otherwise be in place for shyness of knowing or saying what's needed to be in holy relationship with one another. These, the prayers and meditations of our hearts and our minds, we hold now in this silence. In the names of all those known and unknown, remembered and forgotten, in the names of all the helpers of humankind, we say, Amen. Blessed be. Are you okay with a little humor this morning? All right, let's see if I can get my reading open, because even though I rehearsed it, I am not. Here we go. I'm not good at memorizing lines. Maybe you'll recognize this reading, so I won't say where it's from. Courage. What makes a king out of a slave? Courage. What makes the flag on the mast wave? Courage. What makes the elephant charge his tusk in the misty mist or the dusky dusk? What makes the muskrat guard his musk? Courage. What makes the Sphinx the seventh wonder? Courage. What makes the dawn come up like thunder? Courage. What makes the Hottentot so hot? What puts the ape in apricot? What they got that I ain't got? Courage. You can say that again. For those of you who do not recognize the speech of the Cowardly Lion. We have so much recorded music this week, in part because our musicians are still recovering, and we want to give them a rest. But this particular piece that comes next, The Warrior with the women of UUTC, reminds me of finding the power and the courage and the sense of power. And so let's relax and enjoy, and again, a video put together by Janice Cannon.
I was a lost
sermon this morning is one in which I asked a couple of people, who do you think are the folks who showed some courage from their faith in going about what they were doing? I'll lift up a few of those bits of biography in this, but I want to start this sermon with a very important message. I came across a hand-scrawled note that my mother had passed along to me. It was from the Atlantic Monthly back in 1999, and it was from Sue Erickson Lowland, the daughter of Eric Erickson, the human development person, who said this, and I'd like you to keep this in mind even as I talk about some folks who really, really became well known for what they had done. When we grant another person the status of hero, we deny our own full potential for empowerment. Adulation dulls our awareness of the human dimensions of those we idealize, limiting our knowledge of them and ourselves as human beings. Powerfully stated. Just to know the many heroes that we would lift up as their full humanness, and know ourselves as fully human and maybe not fully hero. This sermon is in no way trying to take away from what you have within you to be, in whatever level you have, genuinely yourself. I'm not asking you to be your heroes. This particular month, and I didn't preach on this last year, it was fresh, it was not ready to be preached about yet, but this particular month is the 1-year anniversary of Sister Megan Rice's death at the age of 91. I usually lift up the stories of famous Unitarian Universalists, but this particular publicly known Catholic nun who had been a teacher, who had worked in her order for so many decades, was arrested. Arrested in 2012 at an advanced age after breaking into a naval base and other places. She broke into the National Security Complex in Oak Ridge, Tennessee in July of 2012. With 2 others, they cut through fences and spent 2 hours outside a bunker storing much of the nation's bomb-grade uranium, where they hung banners, prayed, hammered on the outside of the bunker, and spray-painted peace slogans. They were then arrested and charged with felony sabotage. How in the world does a school teacher nun in retirement rise to the occasion of going and spray painting a federal secure facility? One of the order leaders said of her, Sister Megan lived her whole life with love full of action and zeal. Her commitment to build a peaceful and just world was unwavering and selfless. She said in an interview in 2013 after this event that she grew up to activist parents, and they had met with Dorothy Day during the Great Depression and had tried to work for solutions to societal problems. It said that her activism was heavily influenced by her uncle, who had spent 4 months in Nagasaki, Japan, after it and Hiroshima had been leveled by the atomic bombs. Rice would later call that the greatest shame in history. And while still a teenager, she entered the Society of the Holy Child of Jesus to become a nun, took her vows, then went on to get a Master of Science degree and teach in elementary schools in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts before being assigned to work in Nigeria. She spent 23 years in West Africa working as a teacher and pastoral guide, and then learned about the plowshares movement, a reference to a Bible passage that refers to the end of all war. They shall beat their swords into plowshares. She said, I feel drawn to the peace movement. I felt very inspired by direct action on nuclear issues, and my uncle was such a strong influence, and he was still alive at the time. I am grateful to NPR for the write-up after her death a year ago this month for all of that information. I was struck by it at the time. A nun cutting holes into chain link fences. It wasn't just one chain link fence, but getting all the way in to that storage facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and being an absolute pest of herself. She didn't blow up a building or threaten or use violence. Graffiti and signs and just being there are enough for a felony charge against her and for what I know she hoped for, a statement out loud to work for peace, and specifically to work for the end to the threat of nuclear weapons. When I was training in seminary, I had the experience of arriving for an interview at my theological school in Chicago and seeing on the wall a sign that said it was a nuclear-free zone. This was a big deal in the 80s, to declare buildings, churches, or other places. And in the Chicago Maroon, the newspaper, the student news or university campus newspaper, a future journalists sharpening their wit and cynicism wrote, I am so glad to be in a neighborhood where, of course, I would have expected a theological school to be housing nuclear weapons, and so glad that they won't be in our neighborhood. But people had been trying again and again to say, don't go there. Don't go there ever again. No more. Enough. So those who had preceded me at theological school in putting up a sign, nope, no nuclear weapons here, or Megan Rice going off and saying we should not be having these weapons of destruction, let us beat the swords into plowshares. Let's find something better to do with our resources. After all her time with elementary students, all her time in Africa, and coming back in retirement, she had the courage to keep that up. I love that story. The Bible quote of Psalm 23 is something that's often used for folks who are in a moment of stress and need some courage. I don't know if that's what she said to herself while she was locked up. I don't know if it's something where you have at times turned to Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I always have heard that one as a resource for folks who are in a moment of grief or something awful has happened and just needing to think of being in green pastures, being beside quiet waters. It's a meditative, it's a pulling back, it's a refreshment thing, but then it says, he guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. And I think of all of those folks who said, I got to do what I got to do. We have such wisdom in our society. Cornel West, who I know when I was studying and even now, the quotes to help us understand something in a racist America, said, we need the courage to question the powers that be, the courage to be impatient with evil and patient with people. Hear that? The courage to be impatient with evil and patient with people. The courage to fight for social justice. In many instances, we'll be stepping out on nothing and just hoping to land on something. But that's the struggle. To live is to wrestle with despair, yet never allow despair to have the last word. There was something of that in the early readings in this service. To be able to overcome a sense of helplessness. I read something today, this morning, Michael, can't think of his name, his last name, but he's a commentator, and he had a whole thing about eating fast food. What was the... All right, maybe it's that person, but I think not. But a commentator on society, somebody who's willing to take an intellectual stance, even though he's got only a high school education. There you go, Michael Moore. There we go. The wisdom of the group helps save the sermon. Okay, so this sermon illustration here, Michael Moore, I believe this morning released something, an editorial that says, do not let the pundits and the political, always at midterms there's a turnover. It always happens. Always, always, always. This is saying don't let the despair get to you. Go out and do what you need to do. Take action. We have a book that we're going to study. I'm going to lead the discussion on this book, Breathe, A Letter to My Sons by Imani Perry. This was a common read book for Unitarian Universalists, and we picked it up again at the request of the College Walk folk, UUs, who want me to come in, and I love coming in and leading a presentation. We'll have exactly a half hour to review this book, but we're all reading it beforehand. Breathe, A Letter to My Sons. And I'm going to read an excerpt from this. I think it flows from the first two examples that we've heard of Cornel West and the nun. Once, our house alarm was tripped twice in one night. I tried to remain calm, but there was a loud banging sound at the back door the second time. The alarm company called again. I had said the police officers should not come the first time, but I agreed the second time. She says to her sons, you were both frightened. I was too. I called you, Freeman. Thank goodness you had a cell phone. I told you softly to lock your bedroom door and not to come out until I told you. The first degree of fear, and I wonder at this, was not about the intruder who I thought was trying to get in. It was about the police, who I knew could get in, had the responsibility to get in because they had been called. I said, lock your door because the possibility flashed before my face. You might be tipping out of your room, looking to come upstairs to me, or in your breathtaking and youthful courage, looking to protect the home. And what if the police officers saw you, mahogany in the shadows, tall and lean and dreadlocked, and decided you were the intruder, the one who didn't belong in this big house with lilac bushes and manicured Japanese trees in front? And what if they took you out? The courage of a parent. in a society in which violence is something that is always there, a possibility. Courage to say, I need you to stay safe. I need you to be prepared. I need you to be away from danger. Not the intruder, but those who would come to rescue. You can imagine in that half hour on Wednesday, we'll have a chance to look at that quote and others from this book. Perhaps you have a story from your life in which you realized as well, by dint of who you are, skin color, gender, sexual orientation, class, something that set you as not belonging in a certain situation in which you needed the courage. You needed the courage to face what society had for you and to be aware that these stories are out there every day in ordinary households with the beautiful manicured Japanese trees and bushes and those that don't look quite so nice. Courage. I think one of the pieces that's harder for us when we look at history is realizing that some of the folks that we look at as heroes who were fighting against racism and martyred in racism, we forget that maybe they were walking to the beat of a different drum, like a nun who decides to go and break into a federal facility. How many people in her order hierarchy would have approved that? None, I'm guessing. Rita Mae Brown says, the reward for conformity was that everyone liked you except yourself. And there are people who did not conform to the right way of going about things. Oh, well, there must be a nicer way to fix society's problems. Of the people that I lift up here, we have a couple that were forwarded to me, and I'm going to lift up Martha and Waitzel Sharp. We have a flaming chalice symbol because during World War II, Martha and Waitzel Sharp turned their kids over to somebody else to take care of them, picked up at the request of the president of the American Unitarian Association, and went to Europe to try to get refugees out and away from Hitler. 1939 and on, all the dangers that were there, and sometimes themselves were just a step ahead of being arrested by Nazis. They needed a symbol to be on the letterhead and the items that they were doing, so it looked like they were an official organization. And so Unitarian Service Committee wasn't just a typed at the top of a letter, it was a symbol, and they had Hans Deutsch made a symbol of a flaming chalice, thinking of the lamps of light, of knowledge, of freedom, of hope, are all from the histories. A colleague says Hans Deutsch didn't even know Unitarian Universalism at the time, but knew of courage, knew of the courage of Martha and Waitzel Sharp to again and again try and try again. It said that Martha dressed up as a French peasant to help a hunted intellectual out of the country, to accompany on a trip. Looked much more ordinary to see a couple traveling together. To go to great lengths and put yourself in danger. Again, That hero quote I said at the beginning, we'll look up to these people and say, I could never do that. We're not asking people to do exactly what others did. Just to realize that they reached deep somewhere into themselves, whether their congregation thought it was right or not, got up and left and did it. In the civil rights era, we had others. The Reverend James Reeb is well remembered as somebody who went off at the call of Martin Luther King Jr. in the March of Selma. When his marchers were turned back, he asked clergy to come. Some congregations, including Unitarian congregations, did not want their clergy to go. Of course, we didn't like the racism, but no, don't go. James Reeb was able to go. James Reeb, along with others, and with him on one evening, Orloff Miller, another Unitarian minister, had gone to eat and then were on the street and were beaten by a group of 4 white men, identified as outsiders, civil rights folks, stirring things up in Alabama. They were beaten. James Reeb was beaten to death. James Reeb was then memorialized by Martin Luther King Jr. and lifted up in histories. He's one of the better known ones because of that, of the martyrs, of folks who went to do something. Orloff Miller went on to live his life and a career as a Unitarian Universalist minister, having been there, having been beaten himself, having watched his colleague and friend killed. He went on and years later, with courage, went into AIDS ministry, which his son reflected was the hardest part of his ministry. Now, I would have thought the civil rights era was pretty hard, but yeah, it's heroic. It's courage to be there at the bedside of people who he would only know for months in the scourge of what was happening during the AIDS epidemic. I wonder what James Reeb would have done later in his life, given the opportunity to continue in ministry on things beyond the civil rights movement and into new ways of helping in society. I wonder. What about us? Could we have imagined that? Marianne Williamson says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's not our light, not our darkness. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, famous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that's within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. I want to say that Viola Liuzzu from Detroit described herself as a housewife in her 30s, had come down in response to King and arrived just after James Reeb had been killed. And she too was murdered for being a civil rights worker down in the South in Alabama. She too, as a car full of KKK guys pulled up next to her and shot her as she was driving back from the airport after having dropped off other civil rights workers at the airport. They were never convicted of murder, but they did get them on a federal charge of impinging on her civil rights. So they got some jail term. Courage. What do they got that I ain't got? Courage. May you find the way in which you have your light to shine. No matter what age you are, no matter what situation you're in, some way to make a difference. I've named a few individuals. Some of them died for what they did and others didn't. Some lived. Some lent their sense of artwork to the world. Some wrote their words. Others turned out to vote when they were told not to or that it was useless to do so. May you be inspired by your faith to be you in this world, to bring that light into this world, because there is something divine in you being able to speak up in this world. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being you. We close with our final hymn, number 107. Now sing we, the brave of old. Please rise as you're willing and able, and sing in as much as you're willing and able.
Now sing we of the brave of old, who would not sell themselves for gold, yet left us riches manifold. Alleluia. Of those who fought a goodly fight, for liberty, for truth and right, their patient love, their chiefest might. Alleluia. Who when no gleam did point the way, pressed ever on by night, by day, and spite of pain did ever say, Alleluia. Who long the world's old sorrows bore, and toiled and loved and suffered sore, and being dead live evermore. Alleluia.
As you go out, may you remember the light of this chalice, a symbol forged in times of courage and fear. May you go out into your lives being of help to this world in whatever way, to remind us of what you see, the need for justice and truth. In whatever ways you get to be walking to the beat of a different drummer in a society that needs to hear something new. Blessings to all of you. May you go out with courage and come back again to this place of love.